So a lot of my work involves ceramic and painting and assemblage. And I've just been reorganizing my studio, so it's like everything's all over the place. I like to keep everything on wheels to keep it flexible. And the beauty thing I love about the studio is there's tons of lights. So during the day, the light's really amazing. Especially at the end of the day, it's like really beautiful and golden. It's great to paint by. I'm Andrew, how about that? I'll just leave it there. I remember one day I was having a tough time and I felt like, I didn't know who I was, crisis, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I like, I don't know why did I study ceramics for 14 years? And what was I thinking? I lived in New York, I couldn't pay my rent, I was in my early 20s, and I remember being really kind of maudlin and feeling sorry for myself. And this friend of mine who I just met, named Jeffrey, really funny, and always could make you laugh. And everybody was laughing at this table in this coffee shop around, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And he kind of elbowed me in the side. He goes, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what's up." And he goes, "Do you have some identification on you?" And I said, "Yeah, I got my driver's license." And at the time I lived in New Jersey, so I pulled out my driver's license and I gave it to him. And he grabbed it out of my hand like that, and he said, "Your name is Andrew Robinson. That's who you are. Don't you know that?" And then he goes down, he goes, "Oh my God, you live in New Jersey. That's horrible. I'm so sorry for you." And then we all laughed, So again, like that's who I am. When I first left school, like a billion years ago, because I'm old now, I didn't have a studio. So I made a promise to myself that I would draw every day. And part of the reason why I wanted to do that was I wanted to kind of work on my own visual language. I feel like when you go to school, you got your teacher's visual language is always imposed upon you, or the institution. So I learned how to draw all that, and then I had to kind of undo all that. So what I did was I set up kind of a game for myself. And I would get on the New York City subway to go to my day job or teach or do whatever. And I would draw whoever sat in front of me on the opposite side of the train between one stop and the next, which is only about maybe 8 minutes. I had to draw in pen, I couldn't draw in pencil. I wasn't allowed to erase anything, I couldn't fix it later. And I did that for 10 years. I have boxes and boxes of these books. Sometimes you meet some really crazy characters. So sometimes I'll pull like a head from a drawing, and then I'll create a figure for it. I'll even start to sculpt an old man. Like for example, I'll show you this guy over here. Oop. So I made a cast of this old guy who was whistling, and I thought that would be kind of fun. Endoplasmic reticulum. It's this fantastic word that I learned when I was in 8th grade, and I couldn't stop saying it, and my friend Lori, who I grew up with, we would say it to each other. In fact, we would crank call each other on the phone and say the word really fast and then hang up, and it's a word that's always stuck with me. It is my favorite word. Thank you to my science teacher for teaching me that. That is fantastic. Yeah, I've built a few things. When I was a 10-year-old, when I was a little kid, I built my first kiln, And behind you is a big electric kiln. I didn't build that, but I built a kiln in my backyard in my mother's tomato garden. She was not very happy about that because it all got burned up. But it was a great kiln, and I used to fire pottery and do raku, which is a Japanese glaze. And I would fire that up in my mom's tomato garden. So that was the first thing that I really built that I was really proud of. Underneath all of this is upholstery fabric, and I used that to paint on. I guess this was right before we invaded Iraq. This one's called Cool Hunter, and this was right around the time that we were invading Iraq as well. And I think, I like the idea of sewing and kind of bringing different kinds of crafts into my work, partly because I have a background in craft. Lately, what I've been doing is I've been working with fashion designers and working on different projects and costume projects. But it's all, to some degree, an extension of the collecting of fabrics and piecing together kind of skins to paint on. And then this kind of was a crazy abstraction of I think, for me, what I was going through at the time when we were starting to go to war. When I was a little kid, My family had a couple real rough years. We had a Christmas that was really, we were broke. And for me, it was an important holiday that year because my mom managed to put together a nice Christmas dinner. It was like artichokes and chicken soup. And that was like really special. And we each got one present. She made these little ceramic Christmas ornaments. And I remember sitting around the table and how each one of my brothers and my sister and I, we each opened up our present and we like tore through that artichoke and ate our soup real quick. It was meaningful. For me, it goes back to, my family is really important to me. And like I said, I've been really fortunate in life. I've had a lot of moments like that, and I have really amazing people in my life that I really cherish. So the people in my life are significant. Indigo. That's a nice color. You always say blue, everybody says, oh, blue, It's just the most popular color, but no, indigo, it's really beautiful. In fact, I remember I had a bag of indigo. It was just like like a pigment, and it was very hot one summer. And I put the bag down because I was gonna mix some paint. And I had the fan on, and I moved out of the way and I turned around, and when I turned back, my studio was blue. It was indigo. I made that with my hands. It's a little mountain. Let's see. And I can cook really good. When I was a little kid, in the United States, you had to read this old book called The Red Badge of Courage, and it's basically all about the Civil War. And in the first paragraph, or first couple paragraphs of the book, they talk about these different symbols or these different images, and one of them is the cracker box, which is this print here that appears in my work a lot. Basically, it's just a simple drawing that I made a silkscreen from. But in the book, A Red Badge of Courage, the cracker box comes up a lot. There's characters who dance upon them, there are people who play cards on them, and it's one of those incidental things that's in the background of the book. It's not important, it's just a prop. But I love it because it comes up again, and it's such a powerful image. Historically, the idea of the cracker box or the cracker barrel has a big role in 19th century American history. It was always a place where people in a community would come and gather around the cracker box and talk and debate and hash out ideas. And we don't really have that anymore. Everything's been kind of put on the web. So that's our cracker box today. For me, this is what I feel like we've been living through. When I say we, I mean really the Western world, but in the United States in particular. This kind of whistling in the dark. Everything is fine, isn't it? And yet what's happened is we've had leadership that's squandered opportunities. And we've had an economy that's just, fallen apart. Not because there weren't smart people at the helm, it's just because there were smart people who acted really stupidly. So I don't think everything's fine. I think everything's really quite troubled. And I feel like as an artist, I feel it's important for us to kind of move beyond the superficial and have a conversation. I think also in the art world, we've been so fixated on my gallery and my review and my, blah, 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 and my Tate Award and the Venice Biennial and the, another fucking art fair, And I feel like, we've kind of lost track. People like to call themselves artists, but they don't actually do anything, Everything is not fine, and it's time to get back to work. But this is a piece called The Apostate in Caravaggio's Basement. I started painting this painting after I heard a lecture from David Salle, the painter. And I really had this, intense admiration for what they were doing in the 80s when I was young. And I went to go hear David speak, Mr. Salle, and I thought, all right, let me hear what this guy's got to say. I'm really curious. I've read a lot of stuff about him. And so I went, and he was talking to another critic, and they talked around the work. It was a lot of discussion around the formal qualities of the work, and this phrase, Caravaggio's basement, came up because they were talking about Caravaggio in relationship to what David Salle was doing. And I remember leaving the lecture and feeling like a bit of a bubble had been burst, I had kind of I guess maybe made David Salle a bit of a hero in my mind, but I wasn't really seeing him for who he was as a human being or a painter. And it was interesting to hear him just talk about his work in a very pedestrian way, a very kind of practical way. It wasn't romanticized at all. He was very kind of cool and distant. And in a way, it was kind of a relief, because I walked away from the lecture and I came to the studio with all of these thoughts churning through my head, thinking, okay, this guy's not a hero, he's just a painter, and he has interesting ideas, but they're not ideas that I want to necessarily play with. But I would like to be able to get this thing out of my system, So I started working on a portrait, which was actually of Zachary, who you met earlier. And I was working on this painting. It was mainly a portrait of him, and originally it was an interior. It had this really deep perspective, and then I started thinking about this idea of the non-believer, the apostate, the person who believed in God and then rejected God, which is like the ultimate sin, in any religion. And it was for me, it was like a little mini metaphor for what I felt like I was going through in kind of growing out of my need for heroic figures in the art world, like David Salle and Julian Schnabel, who I admire incredibly, but they don't need to be on a pedestal. And it allowed me to kind of find a little bit of my own voice, which I really feel is like, that's our job, that's what I'm trying to do. Gabriella's question is, what disturbs you the most? I made this piece and it was all wrong. I felt like I was sitting in the studio and everything was wrong with this piece. It was the ugliest thing I've ever made. And I really believe that. And what it was a series of trophies, and there was first place, and then second place, third place, and fourth place. And I was making them for a show. And halfway between making the piece, my pottery wheel broke. One of the pieces melted in the kiln, and another one blew up, and it looked like a big mess. It looked like a bunch of trophies for losers. It's a lost cause. I'm never gonna show this piece. So I just made it a trophy for losers. So first prize was winner, and it had winner written on it, and then I scratched it out, and on the other side it said, you suck! And then second prize was kind of this wobbly, fucked up looking trophy, and it said, loser on it in big letters. And then third prize was kind of like, it had blown up on the bottom of the kiln, it kind of melted and sat on the side, and it had big arms, like a big loving cup, but one of them fell off and kind of melted, looked like a big turd, so I call it turd place. And then fourth place literally melted and just wilted in the kiln, just went over like that, and it looked like it was made of rubber. So I just put 4 on it, and I stuck them in the middle of the space. So what disturbs me the most about that is that everyone who I know who has seen the piece really likes it. They think it's really interesting. They feel like it's accessible in it, and I didn't see that at all. So what disturbs me the most is I often don't see what's in front of my eyes, and I often need to kind of step back and get another point of view, which is why other people are so important.
West is dead and it's burning. The rest already